IELTS Academic Task 1 Process Diagrams. What I want to do in this video is show you a couple of process diagrams recently edited for one of my high-level students and give you some examiner's perspective into what I'm looking at when I'm considering band 8 or above grading criteria. So we're going to look at a task regarding how noodles are made, and then after that the manufacture of bricks. So let's start with our noodles. What I recommend to students is that before you start writing, you have a look at the diagram. In particular, you want to be working out an overall summary, a way to summarize this whole process, and also ideally you want to find a way to split the steps of the task into 2 or more body paragraphs. Now with this task, I've found the best way to separate it is into a cooking and packaging stage. So the first 6 steps are the cooking stage and the last 2 steps are the packaging stage. It would be nicer to sort of, since there's 8 stages, to be able to do it halfway through, but I couldn't find a way to do that with this task. So ideally you would do it halfway through, but with this task I had to separate it into the cooking and then the packaging stages. So on the whole, this response from the student is excellent and it's almost flawless, but let's look at some of the ways that we can make it even better. So in terms of the task response, the first thing I'm really keen on establishing or looking at is the overall summary. I want to see an effective overall summary. Now, I think it's better to put the overall summary here, and the reason why is because otherwise we have a very minimal first paragraph. So it'd actually be better to put the overall summary up here. It's actually at the end of the report, and this is fine. You can put it here, that's fine, but I just think it's better to put it in the first paragraph to form one solid paragraph. Anyway, let's have a look at the overall summary. Overall, there are 8 steps in the entire process of noodle production. This is really good. So it's telling the reader how many steps there are, beginning with flour being delivered and ending with sealing the cups. So this is good. It tells me the first and last stage. This is helpful to get an overall idea of the process. The next sentence is like icing on the cake, even better. In addition, 5 ingredients are used in the cups of noodles. So this is great. We've got 2 excellent statements. We've got the number of steps and the number of ingredients. And these are some of the typical options that you've got with the overall summary. You can summarize the number of steps, ingredients used. With some tasks you might be summarizing the number of pieces of equipment. I think that would be difficult with this task, and it's not really that necessary. So what we've got is 2 excellent statements. So this is definitely a band 8 plus overall summary. The other things that I'd be looking at as an examiner when assessing the task achievement is that the first step is covered, and it is. The flour is delivered by trucks. Here's the truck. And you mustn't guess something that might have happened before this. So we shouldn't say, so flour is delivered by trucks. Excellent. We can't say where the flour has come from. We don't have this information, and we should not guess. And if you do, your score will be lowered. Then I want to see that all 8 steps have been covered, and they have been. And then, really importantly, the last stage, the labeling and sealing. And let's see if that's covered. Labels are added to the cups, and they are sealed, and they are made available for sale. Ooh, I don't like this. Now, what's wrong with this? We cannot see it in the process. We can't see them being sold. This is an example of the writer guessing what happens to the noodles. We don't know what happens. They might be sent off as a donation to help people who are starving somewhere. We don't know that they're going to be sold, so we shouldn't say it. That's actually a reason to lower the score for task achievement. And it might be a reason why this task might go down to 7 instead of 8. Then when it comes to cohesion and coherence, I'm looking for the writer to clearly indicate each stage of the process and use phrases to guide me as to when each new step starts. And this has been done really well. The linking words are excellent in this report. We can see at the first step, next, and then subsequently, good word there. At the final step of the process, this is really good, rather than just saying next, indicating to the reader this is the last step of the process. This is what cohesion and coherence is about. It's about making things easier for the reader. And every time the reader has to struggle or guess, this means there's an issue with cohesion and coherence. I found this very easy to read. However, there's one issue with it. I've had to add these 2 phrases in. And why? The writer's done an excellent job of separating the data into the 2 paragraphs according to some sort of logical division. And I was talking about this earlier, the cooking and then the packaging. So this has been done well. The first 6 steps are in one paragraph. The last 2 are in another paragraph. The problem was that I had to add the logic to this. As I said earlier, you have to make the job easy for the reader to go through your report. So you need to signal this logic of how these paragraphs are written. What's included in them? What is the logic? Why has the writer bothered to create these 2 paragraphs? So we have to make this clear, and let's change that to cooking even. Cooking the noodles, making the noodles. I think either one is probably okay. Maybe making is better because it's not only cooking them actually. So maybe making the noodles. So these 6 steps are all about making the noodles. So we tell the reader this. The first 6 stages involve making the noodles. And then when we get on to the last, so we start a new paragraph, we get on to the last 2 stages. Again, we want to indicate the logic to the reader. The last 2 stages involve packaging the noodles. Right? So these 2 phrases that I've added are a reason for not giving 8 for cohesion and coherence. When we get on to vocabulary, I'm interested in these sequencing words again, and that a range has been used, which is the case here. What isn't great if you just write first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, Finally, no good. It's too repetitive and unsophisticated for getting to 8. So this writer's done an excellent job of this. Then I'm going to be thinking about some of the, I guess, the verbs for the process for what's happening in here. And we do have some good usages of verbs, and there's a variety, so we don't want to keep repeating them. So we've got inserted here. Later we've got added. So there's lots of, we've got rolled up here. So there's lots of effective use of language in here. And then there was just one mistake, cut into stripes, cut into strips. That's a pretty minor error. That's not going to stop 8. So this is definitely an 8 in terms of the vocabulary that has been used. There's some good paraphrasing of some of the words in here too, and that's something that I'm interested in as the examiner. And when it comes to rephrasing, it doesn't always necessarily mean you need a completely different word. Sometimes you just change the form of the word. So up here we've got cooking, oil and drying, and then that becomes cooked in oil down here. So that's effective. Grammar, I'm going to be looking for mistakes. There don't seem to be any. And then I'm going to be thinking about the talent. Getting to 8 requires a high level of talent. The way you show talent to the examiner is to have a range of sentence types, particularly complex sentences where you have a dependent clause in it. Here's our dependent clause here, where vegetables and spices are added. So this is great. And here's another one up here. So we can form these often, these complex sentences with relative pronouns, who, where, which, when, that. These words allow us to add information about the subject and create complex sentences. So this is essential for getting to 8. And then I'm going to calculate the overall score. I was going to give it 8 for task achievement, but remember there was that extra step about selling the noodles. That wasn't shown in the task diagram, so I took 1 off the grade here. Now, this is a really important point, and the score could even be lowered for 6. The examiner would be justified in giving a 6, and that's because of this issue here. Data is reported accurately. No, it wasn't, because we don't know the noodles were sold. I get to cohesion and coherence. I really want to give an 8. I like that there's a logical separation of data into paragraphs. What I really don't like is the logic has not been communicated. I would give 7 in this case. Some examiners might still give an 8. But it's easily fixed by just communicating that logic. The writer obviously went through and established the logic in his mind, but then failed to communicate this to the reader. Everything else I really like. I like the way the paragraphs are developed step by step, and I like the linking phrases. They're excellent. So I wanted to give 8. I would probably give 7. Vocabulary 8. There was just in one single error with spelling. That doesn't destroy your score. So at least, well, I'd say 8, but not 9. And then grammar, well, there aren't any mistakes, so 8 is achieved, and also because of the complex sentences. If there weren't any complex sentences, it couldn't get an 8, and even the 7 gets in question It might fall down to a 6 if there's only simple sentences or only like compound sentences, only sentences connected using words like and then so okay, we get an overall score of 7.5, and why has it not got 8? Just a couple of minor things really. One is including that extra step, that's easily fixed, and the other one is we must communicate to the reader the logic for our paragraphing. This is vital, makes a huge difference. Otherwise what happens is the reader reads through the paragraphs and then they just sort of wonder, well, why is there a new paragraph here? You've got to make the job for the reader as easy as possible. In this second task, it's actually a bit problematic. I'm a big fan of finding a place to separate the data so that you can put it into paragraphs. But with this task, I just can't find a separation point. Maybe there is one. If you can see one, then put it into the comments below because I'd be interested. Well, looking at it some more, maybe we could separate it here. Maybe we could have the stages to make the bricks. Yeah, this is it. The stages to make the bricks, and then we can have I don't know quite how we're going to term this stage. Maybe it's the we could have the brick manufacture stage, and then we could have the post brick manufacture stage, I guess. Post meaning after, because it's hard to give this any sort of meaningful label. We can't really say the drying stage because there's also packaging. We can't say drying and packaging because there's also delivery. So that's sort of just a bit messy, but I think it could be separated by these. So we would put a line here. We would have these first stages in one paragraph and then another paragraph here. But when I look into the report, the writer hasn't done this. We've got, so what I was suggesting is we could end the paragraph here, which is this point, but the writer's actually gone on to describe this drying, this in the oven for 24 to 48 hours. You can see in this sentence here. So then me as the reader gets on to the next paragraph, and I don't know why a new body paragraph has been started here. I don't see the logic, which is one problem, and then the logic hasn't been communicated to me if there is some sort of logic. I don't think there is. I can't see any logic. It doesn't make sense to me to have this in the first body paragraph, and then the next body paragraph is still talking about drying, it seems. This is probably what's called firing, and I do know a bit about this process, but the word firing is not used here, and I can guess what's going on here, but I'm not allowed to do that. I can only write about what's actually shown here. So if you just happen to know how bricks are made, you can't add that knowledge that you have into writing this task. So I can't see the logic between the two paragraphs, and if there is one, it hasn't been communicated. So that's going to have issues for the cohesion and coherence. So I'm definitely dropping the score for cohesion and coherence as a result of this. Now, if there really isn't a logic, if you can't find a logic, just write one body paragraph. That's fine. But don't write two body paragraphs with no logic. Better to just have one solid body paragraph. But now, after looking at this for a bit, I've seen one, and it's, like I said, it's the brick manufacturer and the brick manufacturer. You have to be careful how you write it, because this could be considered part of manufacture. But anyway, I think that this is where the split is. It's quite a difficult task to write, actually, because of this, because of the difficulty in dividing your data. So if you can't see how to divide it, just write one body paragraph. Okay, task response. We want to make sure all the steps are included and that the first one and the last one are there. So we do have the first step here. The clay used to make the bricks is extracted from the ground by a large digger. That's there. And we've got the delivery here. And a positive with this task is there's no next step being guessed with this one. So this task response is definitely looking like an 8. Let's look at our overall summary. 7 steps, yes, beginning with digging and culminating in delivery. Yeah, so this is fine. This is an 8. So 8 for the task response, but 7 for the cohesion and coherence because of this issue here with paragraph here and another paragraph here, but no real logic for why we have 2 body paragraphs. If we get on to vocabulary to begin, yeah, I think to begin is okay. I've changed it to in the first step, I think. To begin is probably okay. I just think in the first step maybe is better. We've got well, staying on the vocabulary, we've got effective paraphrasing, and here we've got the verbs that we need to describe the process. And then grammar, there's just one little error here. Sand and water, 2 things are added. Okay, so if I'm scoring it, vocabulary definitely fine for 8. Grammar, yeah, probably let just one thing like that go. It's not a repeated error. There's only one error in the whole report. There aren't any problems with articles, which is typical in these sort of tasks. You see we've got bricks up here, and then we've got the bricks. This is fine because bricks have already been referred to. We've got a roller here, which is correct. The first mention of a piece of equipment or thing in the task, it's going to be using the article or a, and then we can use the later when we refer to something like here, the clay. We've already been talking about the clay. We can call it the clay. So 8 for, let's just quickly go through. 8 for task response, 7 for cohesion and coherence, 8 for vocabulary, 8 for grammar. Overall score 7.5. Why? Some people tell me that, hey, it's not, I think this will, we've got to say 7 here. 8's too high. Why? It's not fair. I've got 8, 7 and 2 8s. That's 7.75. Why is it not 8? It gets rounded down. And then what I've said is it's an excellent report. The language is fantastic. There's the issue with the paragraphing, and I've also commented that I don't like this, what I said, piddly little sentence. I'm not a fan of 1 sentence paragraphs, especially when they're really short, and it's better to just move the overall summary up here. I'm not cutting the score for that, but it's just a comment. So 7.5 seems fair, and it'll be quite easy to get to 8. I guess 1 body paragraph. Even better, have 2 body paragraphs based on some sort of logic that you communicate to the reader. But as I said, you may not be able to do this, and in this situation, just write 1 body paragraph. That's still logical, but it's not logical to create some sort of artificial split based on no logic and based on no communication of logic to the reader. Alright, I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please subscribe to me. And please check out some of my other videos. I'm sure you're going to find them useful.